Hello, American literature. Originally, you would have had a hard copy of what I call the Poetry Toolbox, and you would have been annotating that in class together today. But since we're at home, I've made you a video. You can pause this video and pull one into Notability and watch the video on your phone. Or if you have access to a printer, you can print one and annotate it by hand. But what we want to do is we want to gather all of the tools that we have for analysis of poetry. So we're going to start with the words across the top: diction, tone, rhyme, meter, and theme, and just put some definitions right underneath those. So we're familiar with a lot of these. Diction, we know, is word choice. Tone is author's attitude. Often in poetry, it is the speaker's attitude as well. Rhyme is, it means it sounds the same. Specifically on the ends of lines. The meter is the beat. If you're a musician, you will know that poetry has a beat, and so that's what we'll be looking at for meter. And then theme is universal meaning. Now, before we talked about that not every poem has a universal meaning, but a lot of them do. So you always see if you can figure that out. So there we have up at the beginning of what we need to do. So I'm going to give you some steps for explication. Explication is just a fancy way of saying explaining or providing an explanation. But when we do poetry, we call it an explication. So these steps do not need to be done in any particular order except for one of them, and then they can be done at any order depending on a poem, and not every poem will have all of these. So the first thing that we're always going to do is we're going to consider the title. Just like we did on the TP cast, we're going to do this 2 times, one before we read the poem and one after it. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to number the lines or the stanzas. So if there's just a single stanza, we would number the lines, but if there are multiple stanzas, we will number the stanzas. Often stanzas will have the same number of lines in them. Then we're going to look at the end word of each line to see if we have a rhyme scheme, and we'll mark that. Then we'll also look at the meter. The way we can tell meter is by counting the syllables. So when we count syllables, if they're all the same or if there becomes a pattern in each of the stanzas, then we know that there is some kind of meter. We're also going to look for a tonal shift. We talked about that before. Sometimes that is done through character, but a lot of times it is done through tone. We'll look at symbolism, and we will paraphrase just like we did with our TP cast. But some of our poems are much shorter when compared to Thanatopsis, and so they're easier to do. We are going to slash the end stops. End stops are the period, the exclamation point, the question mark, and we're going to do the semicolon. And so that shows us where the thoughts are. And then the final thing that we will do is we will circle the colon. The colon often precedes a list. And so this is a way for us to look at to see if we have a list by looking at those colons. The next thing we want to consider is the mode of the poetry. If it is narrative, it tells a story, okay? If it is lyric, it explains emotions. If it's didactic, it teaches something. For instance, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue is a didactic poem. And then if it's a dramatic poem, it reads a little bit like a monologue. I do not know of an American author who has written a dramatic poem, but you will run into those next year in Brit Lit. We also look at figurative language. All of this should be familiar to you. We're just gathering it all on one place so we can remember them all. And then when we get to our poetry test, you'll be able to use your toolbox. So the big three, so we have simile, metaphor, and personification. We have extended metaphor, which we saw in our Puritan poets. We have hyperbole, which is an over exaggeration, and then we have litote, which is the opposite, and it's an understatement. Okay, an understatement. And we always watch for allusion, specifically to the Bible or to mythology or to other poems or other pieces of literature. So we always watch for allusion. We also will have sound devices. These are outside of rhyme, and we will get those not today. We have 3 kinds of rhyme, imagery, forms, and then we're going to talk about free verse and blank verse as well. Before I'm watching a timer because I can only go so long for my YouTube channel. So on rhyme, there's 3 kinds of rhyme, and you may encounter one of these. It seems like we have encountered a slant rhyme already with our Puritans. We have an end rhyme, which means it's the ends of lines. We have an internal rhyme, which means it is in the middle of a line. We have 2 words that rhyme. And then we have a slant rhyme. Often they almost are the same, or they're close to the same, but yet when you say them, they sound differently. And so a slant rhyme, I'm going to write that so you can read it. So you will use your poetry toolbox today to work on Old Ironsides, which is about a ship that served in the Civil War. That our poet Whittier wrote about Old Ironsides. And so we are going to look at that. Oh, I think it's Whittier. It may be Lowell. Let me make sure. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, and I've gotten all my papers mixed up. Well, fiddlesticks. Sorry, guys. No, it is Oliver Wendell Holmes is the poem we're doing today, and we're doing Old Ironsides. So once you take your notes, you should be ready to go and to annotate that and answer the questions. And then hopefully I'll see you in person tomorrow. But if not, there will be another poem for you to work on independently. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll be at the computer all day. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.